Hi everybody, welcome to BlackAmericana. I'm Ashley, and in today's episode, we are looking at the decades-long bond between L.A. Reid and Diddy. L.A. Reid was an ally to Diddy when many in the industry thought he was finished, but Diddy also helped L.A. reinvent himself along the way. So we'll look at each man's personal journey and then explore how their paths merge. So if you're ready, keep watching. Antonio L.A. Reid and his musical partner Kenneth Babyface Edmonds crafted a sound that spread like wildfire in the music industry. To capitalize on this popularity, L.A. envisioned the two starting a record label. The label would be called LaFace, a fusion of their respective stage names. Their mentor Clarence Avant steered them toward the Clive Davis-led Arista Records. Clive envisioned LaFace being the sound of 90s R&B and gave the duo a distribution deal. L.A. and Babyface started out well as label partners, and they set up shop in Atlanta, quickly transforming the city's music scene. But before long, things started to take a turn. For one, Babyface wanted to work with mainstream non-LaFace artists, while L.A. was pressing him to give the material to their artists. But amazingly, the biggest breach in their partnership was due to their differences on a then unknown singer named Usher. A 13-year-old Usher Raymond IV was scouted by L.A.'s brother Bryant, and L.A. signed him on the spot after he rocked the LaFace office with his rendition of Boyz II Men's End of the Road in 1992. L.A. later had Usher perform for Babyface and Daryl Simmons, who often composed alongside them and is nicknamed the Silent Partner. To L.A.'s shock, the two were not moved by Usher. Babyface felt they should focus their attention on another teenage act, Tevin Campbell. Now let's set the backdrop to who Tevin Campbell was in this era. He was a child prodigy who signed to Quest Records, owned by the peerless super producer Quincy Jones. Tevin made his professional debut when he sang Tomorrow, A Better You, Better Me, the lead single from Jones's Back on the Block album. That album went on to win Album of the Year at the Grammys in 1991. And Tevin received another major cosign. Prince decided to mentor him, with Prince producing his first crossover hit, Round and Round. Tevin even had a role in Prince's film Graffiti Bridge. Tevin secured plush appearances like a performance on Saturday Night Live and a guest spot on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. His debut album was released when he was 15 and certified platinum. Tevin was primed to be on the Mount Rushmore for his musical generation, and his team was determined that his second album would meet expectations. The kid just looked as if he could not fail, and Babyface wanted equity in his legacy. So that left L.A. Reid on his own to figure out what to do with Usher. His first approach was to break Usher via a movie soundtrack, a method that worked beautifully for LaFace songstress Toni Braxton with the Boomerang soundtrack. Usher's debut single, Call Me a Mac, was placed on the Poetic Justice soundtrack but gained no real traction. One day in 1993, while L.A. was in the studio with Usher, his partnership with Babyface was dealt its biggest blow. Babyface scheduled recording time with Tevin Campbell in the room next door. Tevin was recording what ended up being an instant classic, Can We Talk? Usher was crushed, and L.A. felt the slight was intentional. Finally, Babyface told L.A. he no longer wanted to work with him musically, although they would still be business partners. Now with Babyface doing his own thing, L.A. needed a new spark. One day while he was reading a music trade publication, he saw that Uptown Records had fired Sean Puffy Combs. Although they had never met, L.A. asked one of his employees to set up a meeting, as he was considering hiring Puffy as A&R for LaFace. Now, who was Sean Combs in 1993? The native New Yorker had dropped out of Howard University to pursue a music career at Uptown Records. He worked his way up from being an unpaid intern to vice president of A&R. Uptown was a mainstay in R&B, but it also carried respect in hip-hop. Controversy attached to Puffy's name as quickly as prosperity did. His reputation was bruised after the City College Stampede in 1991, a charity event where 9 people tragically lost their lives and more than 24 were injured. Then New York City Mayor David Dinkins led an investigation that determined Puffy failed to adequately secure the event and inform the crowd of the capacity limit. Eventually, Andre Harrell, the founder of Uptown, had enough of Puffy's antics. That included him walking around the office shirtless and other unprofessionalism. Just as Puffy was developing his label Bad Boy Records under Uptown, Andre fired him in 1993. With no other label prospects lined up, Puffy was devastated. L.A. Reid seemed to call at the right time. L.A. arrived in New York and Puffy picked him up in his BMW so the two men could talk business. L.A. was so impressed by Puffy's vision that he had a change of heart. L.A. said, quote, "I didn't want him to work for me. I wanted to help make his dream come true. I told him I would take him to meet Clive Davis." Now, Clive and L.A. have this dispute about who introduced Puffy to Clive first. Perhaps the best way to settle the score is Puffy's own words. In a 2001 interview with New York Magazine, Puffy said, "L.A. had a meeting with me about bringing me to LaFace, and after I spoke to him, he was like, 'This is bigger than some production deal. I need you to sit and meet with Clive.' And he brought me to Clive. It was gracious of him and also smart." End quote. Clive was impressed, but he gave Puffy a warning. He told Puffy to consider changing the name of the label. Clive felt the name Bad Boy would come back to haunt Puffy and limit the diversity of talent the label could acquire, but Puffy was adamant on keeping the name because it represents who he is. L.A. Reid assured that he would provide guidance for Puffy, with LaFace and Bad Boy complementing each other. LaFace would continue to lead the forefront of R&B, and Bad Boy would establish the new wave of hip-hop. With this duo, all of Arista's needs concerning black music would be covered. It sounded like a win for everyone. Bad Boy and Arista agreed to a deal reportedly worth $10 million. Puffy's son, Justin Dior Combs, was born in December 1993, and L.A. was named his godfather. In a 2009 interview with Vibe magazine, L.A. Reid stated he had 7 record industry sons: producer Dallas Austin, Sean Diddy Combs, producer and So Jeff founder Jermaine Dupri, late music executive Shakir Stewart, producer Tricky Stewart, and in case you're wondering, no, Shakir and Tricky were not related, the now late Rico Wade of Organized Noise and the Dungeon Family, and singer Usher. So, hopping back to the 90s, L.A. still needed to get his youngest son Usher on track. His estranged partner Babyface had given the LaFace sound to a non-LaFace artist who would be Usher's direct competition. L.A. decided to make Usher completely different. To do that, he called up Puffy and asked him to take Usher through artist development, what they call flavor camp. So Usher lived with Puffy for about a year. Usher would describe this experience as some of the hardest days of his life in a May 2004 Rolling Stone cover story. The arrangement generated quite the discussion in the industry too. Clive Davis noted it was a quote-unquote bold move, but one he felt developed Usher into a star. Jermaine Dupri had a more negative take. In his 2008 memoir, Young, Rich, and Dangerous, The Making of a Music Mogul, he wrote, quote, "Usher was sent to live with Puffy. At that point, Usher was still the quiet choir boy doing talent contests for his stage mother. But Puff was a young man living the single life back then. That was a hard partying crowd for a teenage boy from Chattanooga to be growing up with. No telling what he was exposed to. They wanted him to be this bad boy, and Usher thought he had to be there too. But that wasn't who he was. The image didn't work because it wasn't real. That's partly why his first album failed." L.A. was not disappointed about the lackluster album sales. In fact, he felt it would be to Usher's benefit that fame did not come too quickly. His main goal was for Usher to develop an identity, and he felt Puffy was instrumental in that process. What did unravel L.A. was Usher's voice changing. Young male singers have faced a brutal reality when their voices change. It can be a time of uncertainty, broken confidence, and rejection. It is essentially like becoming a new artist because you have a new voice. L.A. was so rattled about Usher's voice changing that he considered dropping him from LaFace. He credits Puffy with stepping in and calming him down, but L.A. admits the doubt might have scarred his relationship with Usher. L.A. had also recently signed Outkast, LaFace's first rap act. While L.A. was convinced of their talent, he was a bit clouded on how to market them. He had Puffy come in and assist with Outkast's music videos. Later that year, LaFace released a definitive R&B girl group album of the 90s, T.O.C.'s Crazy Sexy Cool. As L.A. listened to the album, he realized they had great music with a clever album title, but no songs called Crazy Sexy Cool. So L.A. called up Puffy to put together some interludes with the title. Bad Boy exploded on the scene in 1994, led by Craig Mack's Flavor in Your Ear. Puffy further solidified his place on the music scene when the Notorious B.I.G. had a string of hits with Juicy, Big Papa, and One More Chance. The label found success with other acts like Faith Evans, Total, 112, Mace, and The Lox all going platinum or better. In the label's first 4 years, Bad Boy brought in $150 million in sales. In 1997, the Notorious B.I.G. tragically lost his life in a still unsolved crime. That year, Puffy released his debut album, No Way Out, formerly under the moniker of Puff Daddy and the Family. Long mocked for being a thirsty wingman, he was now a bona fide star. He managed to reinvent himself under circumstances that would have destroyed many. Some found his sharp pivot callous and his grief disingenuous, but the commercial success was undeniable. The album sold over 5 million copies in the United States alone and produced 2 #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. Bad Boy's accomplishments were a bragging point for both L.A. Reid and Clive Davis. L.A. prided himself on being the middleman for Bad Boy and Arista, and Clive was proud his risk produced dividends. Well, Arista's parent company, Bertelsmann Music Group, BMG for short, was less than impressed. BMG had a mandatory retirement age of 60. In 1999, Clive Davis turned 67. Now, I know some of my fellow Americans might hear this and say, wait, isn't that illegal? Well, the label was a part of a German business conglomerate, so different land, different laws. Clive Davis was given grace to continue working at Arista, but 2 specific issues were plaguing him. The first was the no longer deniable decline of Arista's golden child, Whitney Houston. That's another video for another day. The second issue was all things Puffy and Bad Boy. Clive gave Puffy a lucrative deal during their renegotiation in 1996. For Arista to secure a 50% stake in Bad Boy, Clive reportedly gave Puffy a $700,000 annual salary, a $6 million advance, and a $50 million line of credit, along with a multi-million-dollar recording studio to make the deal sweeter. The next year, Bad Boy delivered 5 #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100 and massive album sales. Puffy was ready to renegotiate again, saying, quote, "I want to be very, very rich right away." Clive obliged, with some outlets reporting Puffy received an advance as large as $55 million, although Clive says it was closer to $28 million. Bad Boy went into steep decline by 1999. That year, Mace, whose debut album Harlem World sold nearly 5 million copies, experienced a spiritual epiphany. He announced he was retiring from rap to become a pastor shortly before the release of his second album. The label felt his absence financially and creatively. Puffy's sophomore effort, Forever, was also a dud, despite flashy music videos and star-studded features. Other acts also saw a decline in sales or wanted out of Bad Boy. In all, Bad Boy went from having a reported $130 million in sales one fiscal year to $30 million in sales the next fiscal year. Puffy's reputation again collapsed. According to a February 2000 article in Vanity Fair titled Clive Davis Strikes Back, Puffy was reputedly associated with 4 unalivings, including the tragic loss of Tupac Shakur, which led Arista to double-check their partner's life insurance policy. Now, the article does not expand on who the other alleged victims might be, but if things keep going the way they are for Puffy, we might find out. In April 1999, he hit music executive Steve Stoute with a champagne bottle over a dispute about his portrayal in Nas's Hate Me Now music video. In December 1999, a New York nightclub ruckus led to him being arrested on weapons and bribery charges. And it seemed the public was having Puffy fatigue. Sentiments ranged from the shiny suits being corny, to he wasn't a real rapper, to just annoyance with his bravado. Even with these disappointments, Clive Davis was proud Arista made its highest profits in history in 1999, posting over $500 million, but it wasn't enough for BMG. Not only was Clive out, but he would be replaced by a mentee, L.A. Reid. It had been L.A.'s dream to sell LaFace and go work for Clive Davis, but Clive brushed him off. L.A. grew angry, especially since he felt Clive was taking credit for wins at Arista that really were not his, while Clive felt Arista had not recouped enough money from LaFace to entertain the discussion. Clive underestimated how tenacious L.A. could be, and he had no idea BMG had offered L.A. the chance to lead Arista. The two were so opposite on the surface. Clive received a bachelor's degree with Phi Beta Kappa honors from New York University and obtained a Juris Doctor from Harvard Law School. L.A. Reid only had a 10th grade education. BMG enrolled L.A. in Harvard's 8-week executive leadership course to polish his resume. Clive was shocked and felt betrayed. L.A. was slated to become the president of Arista on July 1, 2000. His hiring was controversial, as Clive fought to retain the position and his supporters criticized BMG's decision. Even those who congratulated L.A. disliked the optics of the situation, especially with him being the first black man to lead a major label. Ultimately, BMG won and L.A. became president of Arista. But just before he began his new post, L.A. Reid married the former Erica Holton in Capri, Italy. The who's who of the music industry came, including BMG ownership. It was a 3-day event where guests were required to wear white linen and their rooms were stocked with wine, bowls of iced cherries, and scented candles. Puffy said it was like Hollywood stars did back in the day. It might have felt like an old Hollywood romance movie, but Puffy decided to bring some action. After catching wind that Shakir Stewart was dating his on-again, off-again girlfriend Kim Porter, Puffy confronted Shakir after the wedding and bashed a chair over his head, leaving Shakir bleeding on the floor. According to Shakir's friends, L.A. quickly diffused the situation as both men worked for him. If you are interested in more of Shakir Stewart's story, please check out our visual biography on him. L.A. becoming Arista's head honcho was not the easiest transition for Puffy. In the New York Magazine interview, Puffy was asked how was he adapting to L.A. being his boss, to which he quips, "Get the F out of here. I'm my own boss. He's my partner." Puffy would spend the first 2 years of L.A.'s tenure at Arista rehabilitating his image, even going as far as renaming himself P. Diddy. In 2002, Bad Boy left Arista. Diddy originally wanted to stay, but BMG was ready to move on. Diddy went on a public bid to secure 100% ownership of the Bad Boy catalog. He told the Los Angeles Times of his conversations with L.A. Reid, saying, quote, "As far as Black history, we usually get the short end of the stick. I said to L.A., as a Black man, when is this opportunity going to come up again that someone can, as a young Black man, make a run at being a superpower in this industry? It's just exciting and exhilarating to me," end quote. Diddy's wish was granted and he walked away from the Arista BMG family with sole ownership of Bad Boy. L.A. could never quite get right at Arista, but it wasn't all his fault. The legend of Clive Davis loomed large, and the industry was in a slump. He was having wins with artists like Usher, Pink, Avril Lavigne, and Outkast, but it wasn't enough for BMG. He was fired in early 2004, but was quickly named chairman of the Island Def Jam music group. In October 2008, Usher introduced L.A. Reid to his new artist, a 14-year-old Canadian named Justin Bieber. L.A. said seeing Justin for the first time reminded him of how he felt when he first met Usher. L.A. quickly signed Justin to Def Jam. Justin's signing was especially therapeutic for L.A. as he grieved the shocking loss of Shakir Stewart, which L.A. describes as the darkest point in his life. Shakir's memory was still so strong at Def Jam that Justin partially dedicated his debut album to him. If you want to learn more about the aftermath of Shakir's passing, again, check out our visual biography on him. Now, it is unclear how Diddy became a mentor to Justin. Some speculate it was more so the idea of Justin's former manager, Scooter Braun, than Usher in L.A., but whatever the case, Diddy's presence formally established a narrative that Usher was passing the torch to Justin. Justin was able to receive the introductory grandeur Usher was denied in favor of Tevin Campbell. Justin was widely successful, but the optics were not universally praised. Justin broke into the mainstream in 2009, the same year Barack Obama was sworn in as president, and we were said to be living in a post-racial society. On one hand, the mentorship trifecta of L.A., Diddy, and Usher seemed in line with the times. But there were those who noted that history is not so easily undone. The plight for Black artists to receive their just due is ongoing. Some question why the torch couldn't have been passed to someone who looked like Usher. Many felt L.A., Diddy, and Usher were giving away cultural capital and criticized the move. This observation is not meant to be an attack on Justin, but rather highlighting a discussion that has gone on for generations in Black entertainment. If you would like more discourse on this, check out our documentary titled How Black Americans Introduced the Beatles to America, VJ Records. Despite the mixed response, backing Justin gave all three men a career boost. Usher's career was dragging with separate record sales and a scandalous marriage. L.A. needed to restabilize Def Jam after the loss of Shakir Stewart, and Diddy's Bad Boy roster was in flux. They all helped each other reinvent themselves like they had 15 years before. L.A. Reid was hired as president of Epic Records, owned by Sony Music Entertainment, in 2011. Ironically, Clive Davis was promoted to Chief Creative Officer of Sony in 2008. So L.A. was back working for Clive, although the two had somewhat made peace by then. Bad Boy Records moved to Sony with a distribution agreement through Epic in 2015. It was truly a full circle moment with Diddy, L.A., and Clive. But the reunion would be brief. L.A. left his post at Epic in 2017 after accusations of misconduct with female employees. Bad Boy Records is still currently in business with Epic Sony, but the labels have been rocked with lawsuits as heinous accusations against Diddy mount. Now let me be clear, I don't know what all business and personal transactions have gone on between Diddy and L.A. What we do know is L.A. is currently in the thick of civil litigation, and Diddy is facing unprecedented upheaval in the federal criminal system. Here at BlackAmericana, we believe in nuance. Whatever happens with L.A. and Diddy, they left a musical legacy. Their reported vices do not negate their professional victories. Our hope is future generations will parse the good from their work and continue to propel our musical heritage forward. Thank you for being a part of this episode. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share if you haven't already. And be sure to visit our website at www.blackamericanamedia.com and sign up for our newsletter. See you soon.